a pleasure to be here, and you guys at the Natural History Society should give yourself a pat on the back for being able to successfully pull off having a rebirth of the Natural History Society. Good job, guys. So in 1982, I had to move from New Jersey. Now, I used to live right near Franklin and right near Patterson, and I used to go collecting there on a regular basis. So when I found out that I had to go to Maryland, I was less than happy. And when I finally got down here, I called my collecting partner, Jim. I said, well, Jim, I have a day off today. It's Saturday, and I'm going to go and I'm going to check out mineral collecting in Maryland. And the wise guy's comment was, what are you doing in the afternoon? Yes, it's not known for minerals. It's up there with Delaware and Rhode Island, and even Rhode Island has had some spectacular finds. So I took it as a challenge. Obviously, if there's something there, nobody's found it because nobody's looked there because of its reputation. And I was pretty pleased with the results. So from 1983 to 2010, I collected Maryland minerals, and I often did it with a cadre of other collectors such as Andy Dietz, the late Buck Keller, John Ertman, and a host of other interesting characters. So what happened in those years? I was field trip chairman of a couple of the clubs, and I managed to negotiate with some of the quarries to get in to mineral collect. That was back before the rule changes of 2010, which makes collecting in a working quarry now almost impossible. So what did we find? We found that not only was there interesting stuff here, but there were several locations that yielded spectacular, even for the East Coast of the United States. And it took quite a while to get people to understand this. And my talk in 2010 was intended to make people see that no, Maryland was also a good state and should be included in the mineral producing states. And I got some really positive feedback from the talk. So what is it that was so great? Nutshell, Hunting Hill. Hunting Hill in Rockville was the unique quarry for the state. And there's papers out there, and one of them is mine, on the geology and minerals of Hunting Hill. Most notably, the grossulars. It turns out that there were 75 different species at Hunting Hill, just waiting to be collected. And so for many years we did, and myself and other collectors came out with wonderful things. The other one was Medford Quarry. The earlier person said, well, there's lots of calcite in Maryland. Well, a lot of it in Medford. And Medford was known for its giant crystals. And in fact, the Natural History Society, I believe, has the largest crystal on record from there. It's a 25-inch doubly terminated calcite scalenihedron. Hopefully it's on exhibit. Union Bridge Quarry, the cement quarry, didn't let people in very often, but they did allow a few people in. And that produced probably the prettiest calcites ever found in Maryland. And of course, there was the lost smoky quartz location in Howard County by Clarksville. It yielded these enormous gemmy quartz crystals up to 2 pounds. One-time unique find is Noah McMansion sitting on top of that site. So all in all, great stuff could be found. It's also produced some amazing gold specimens from Montgomery County, not just little specks or bits in the river, beautiful gold coming out of quartz. And finally, in 2010, that all came to a screeching halt. There was some mine accidents in coal mines, and government and insurance rules strictly prohibited anything other than the work at hand in those quarries. So collectors were not allowed in. I understand there's limited collecting now, but not like it used to be. So my talk at Rochester outlined all these things up to 2010. Some of the places will be familiar. Some of them will not be because they're just little holes in the ground. But in any case, I'm sure you'll find it interesting. So enjoy, and at the end, I'll answer any questions. Go ahead.
Blah, blah. If someone offers, I say thank you. And so if I can get the speaker roster settled by June or July, I'm happier. So people that are on the list that have volunteered but haven't said, I mean, when Rainer Boda said, I will come and give a talk when Olaf comes, but then he had to cancel because they moved and it was a mess. He'll come next year. I mean, okay, so I filled that slot a year in advance. This year, there was a slot. So I said, Fred, what do you think about this? And very graciously, he seemed to be excited about it. It's great. I always like it when... Fred grew up in New Jersey, and those of you who've been mineral collectors for a while know him as an expert about and a premier dealer for Franklin Sterling minerals. Then he moved. And he moved to Maryland, where the people who know assured him there were no minerals in Maryland anywhere. And that if he wanted to continue collecting, the closest places would be north in Pennsylvania and south in Virginia. That's where all the action is. You know, I was, when I read, he sent me an email with biographical stuff, and I read that, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's why there's a blank spot on the geological map. It's just white there, right? You know, obviously, no minerals. He didn't really buy that, but, you know, the opinion was pretty overwhelming. And then he and John Erdman found a major pocket of gem quality grossulars at Hunting Hill, which has been featured in the Min Record article. And he became convinced that they can think what they want, but I know better. Fred has been working since then to advance both mineral collecting in Maryland and the history of mineralogy and specimen mineralogy in Maryland. And so I'm pleased to welcome to the podium today Fred Parker, The Minerals of Maryland, Unexpected Surprises, and Fred claims to be a slide man too, but this is the first digital version.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. At the outset, I'd like to note, at the outset, I'd like to note that this presentation is a collaboration between myself and Jeff Nagy here. Jeff has made very significant contributions to the mining history and discovery of old mines as well as new mineral collection locations in the state of Maryland, most notably the Waterside prospect, which I will discuss. There are no good collectible minerals in the state of Maryland. Okay, that's a perception, that's not a fact. It's a perception I had, as Steve brought out, when I moved from New Jersey to Maryland 27 years ago. I'm willing to bet it's a perception that some of you, at least in the audience, have here this morning when you walked in. What's this guy going to talk about for 45 minutes? Serpentine and chromite? Because that's the general perception. Hey, I don't blame you. I used to think it too. But more importantly, let me read you a quote that was written by Edgar Weary in the American Mineralogist of June 1923. Quote, "The D.C. and its immediate vicinity, Maryland, is, from the standpoint of a mineral collector, such that the announcement of even a negative mineral occurrence may be worthwhile." Those are casts. Boy, talk about insulting. Okay, you know, seriously, folks, Maryland is the Rodney Dangerfield of East Coast mineralogy. It gets no respect and is misunderstood. So today, we're going to present Maryland minerals and mineralogy from the viewpoint of two contemporary mineral collectors with totally different viewpoints. And I'm going to do it in three parts. The first part will be a short history of the mining of Maryland. Then I'm going to briefly go over a simplified geologic map to show you what the geology is for the localities we're going to touch on. And then I'm going to discuss selected mineral occurrences and the minerals found there in a slideshow. Okay. Captain John Smith came up the Chesapeake Bay in the early 1600s, and it's thought that he probably found some of the sedimentary iron ores that are along the, quote, I-95 corridor. These were mined in the 1800s, open pit mines, some underground mines. However, mining didn't begin in earnest in Maryland until around 1740, when the first patents were given out for some copper and iron mines. In the American Revolution, the iron mines of Maryland played a major part in supplying ordnance for the Continental Army. The mines at Catoctin Ore Banks and Mineral Hill were known to be producers for iron during the Revolutionary War. And in fact, there's part of the Mineral Hill complex that's still called the Revolutionary Workings. Similarly, during the War of 1812 and the Civil War, iron and as well as copper were produced. And it was in the 1840s that Maryland, along with Pennsylvania, became a world producer of chromite. It's in serpentine. There's a connection there. After the Civil War, however, mining in Maryland branched out. And we see not just iron, not just copper, but a wide variety of minerals, including gold, copper, manganese, lead, and zinc, mined in Maryland. Now, these were all not large complexes. These were not all hugely successful, but nonetheless, the mines still exist in most part today. Non-metals included things like mica, quartz, beryl, asbestos, clay, roadstone, and coal. And of those, only the last two are actively mined today. There's no active metal minings for the reasons of being so small. So what's our picture here? This is a picture of the...
Yeah, can you use the microphone?
Sure. Absolutely. Got it. Okay. This is a picture of the Potomac or Dargan mine. This is about 5 miles upstream from Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, on the Maryland side of the Potomac River. This is the C&O Canal, which parallels the Potomac River, and the Potomac River is right here. Now, the owner of this wanted to be very clever. He wanted to make as much profit as possible, so he wanted to be as efficient. So he sunk the shaft and decided that he could just pull up the ore, wash it using the water from the canal, dump it on the canal boats, and away they went. He'd be on his way to profit. What he did not recall is that if you sink a shaft and you have a river here, okay, you already figured it out. I'm not going to finish it. But what's interesting about this mine was a failure. It was a manganese mine. It was not probable. But this is well remembered because this is the only picture we can find of a Maryland mine during or just after its period of working. So this is a rare picture, and we're pleased to have it. All right. Having talked about the mining history, let's go to the geology and the geologic map. Hello. Technical problem.
The arrow, right?
Yep. Okay, we got a problem.
We tested this at 8 o'clock and it worked fine.
Yeah, 8:30 was fine too, yeah. Okay. Why'd you hit the lights?
Yeah, you still have your slides. Try it now, Fred. No.
Bar up there where people don't wear shoes.
Now, contrary to what Steve said, this should not be white and blank. All right. for the sake of this talk, we're going to simplify this map even further. We're going to omit anything along here, which is basically the east side of the Chesapeake Bay, and I'm going to cut the state off arbitrarily right here, because the only thing out here are coal mines, and there aren't really anything of specimen interest. So we're going to concentrate on the center and then just selected parts at that. Up here, this is the Susquehanna River, and right here and here, as well as up in here, there are some interesting diabase quarries, gabbro quarries. There's serpentines that come up in Pennsylvania. Texas, for example, is right here, and state line is right here. Out and through here, they reappear in Baltimore County, and most importantly, they reappear again here in Montgomery County, this area just above DC, including the Hunting Hill Quarry. As we travel downstate here, these are all sediments, but we're just going to talk a little bit about the Miocene sediments in here, because they have several really interesting gypsum occurrences. Going back up and through here, this purplish red color here, this is the Baltimore gneiss dome, and basically these are metasediments. They're Precambrian or Cambrian era metasediments. But what's important about these is they have pegmatite intrusions in. They're not shown on the map, but they're scattered around. And we've found that the pegmatite occurrences in Maryland are really quite fascinating. Through here, they also occur in Montgomery County here, and we'll talk briefly about that site. In through here we have more metasediments, and most notably in Carroll County in this area, we have what we locally call the Wakefield Marble. And in the Wakefield Marble is the Medford Quarry and the Union Bridge Quarry, as well as the Liberty Mine, which is the largest producer of copper. Moving westward, we start hitting Paleozoic sediments that continue out across here. However, we also have this ridge that goes up here. This is the, right here. These are the Catoctin Mountains and Braddock Mountains. These are Precambrian metavolcanics. If you continue this up into Pennsylvania, right above the borderline is where Blue Ridge Summit, the LGAF quarry is, which produced so much native copper from Pennsylvania. However, it comes into Maryland too. Unfortunately, theirs is better. If you take the other end of this down here, just near Harper's Ferry, is also an interesting spot for quartzes. There are quartz veins there, and they have some very interesting material, which I'll show you. Going west, these are limestones, shales, and sandstones. And of course, the limestones contain similar minerals as would those in Pennsylvania and Virginia. All right, let's continue on here. We're going to go to mineral occurrences and selected specimens from those occurrences. I spent a cold winter's afternoon when the blizzard hit, trying to figure out roughly how many valid mineral species were in Maryland. And even to my astonishment, it's somewhere between 200 and 250. This was a back of the envelope value, but based on what I knew and what the books had and what I'd done research on, that's about the right number. Carolite has Maryland only has one type locality. That's the Patapsco mine in Carroll County, which is the type locality for carolite. So let's continue on our little journey here. And the localities will roughly coincide with what I went over on the geologic map. In those gabbros and diabases along the Susquehanna River, there's a quarry called the Maryland Materials Quarry. It's a roadstone quarry. It's very deep. It has a lot of metavolcanics again, metasediments, and a lot of metamorphic rocks, including quartz veins and chlorite schists. In the chlorite schists are these wonderful black tourmalines. These grow up to about 6 or 7 inches. They're usually at least single terminated. Many are doubly terminated. This is a cabinet-sized specimen. These crystals are about 4 to 5 inches and about 1 inch in diameter. These came out in some abundance about 15 years ago and were actually on the web, and occasionally you can still pick them up. More common at this quarry, however, are these black tourmalines in quartz. These are so common that nobody picks them up. However, there was one find of them about 20 years ago that had slabs of quartz that had complete 360-degree pinwheels up to about 1 foot. Quite impressive. I mentioned the Maryland Miocene, and there are numerous locations in there, each of which produce its own distinctive gypsum crystals. Chancellor's Point is the most famous site, along with Drum Point, Chesapeake Beach, the Patuxent River, Fort Washington, Fort Foote, and more recently the Woodrow Wilson Bridge diggings. This one here is a Drum Point gypsum. It's a small cabinet piece. It's very nice, and they do fluoresce if we have any fluorescent people here. This is a large cabinet piece from the Chancellor's Point locality. This is from the Academy of Natural Sciences collection in Philadelphia, Maryland collection. It's an ex-Vox piece, and it's very good for the location, and they were collectible up until a few years ago when somebody built a house over it and completely cemented the wall, the cliffs in front of it, which included the old Chancellor's Point location. Progress. Okay, I mentioned the Woodrow Wilson Bridge project. A collector who was looking for Miocene shark's teeth went to a pile that had been dug out for the bridge abutments and instead came back with about 20 flats of gypsum crystals. Now what's neat about these is this is the Miocene sediment. These are pebbles in the Miocene sediment. These gypsums reach up to about 2 inches. This is a small cabinet piece, and they come out in various arrays as well as single crystals in the mud. Up north of Baltimore, there's an extensive belt of chlorite schists, and we found at least one locality where there are huge outcrops of these garnets. These garnet are almandine garnets. They grow up to about 2 inches at the location. These are a little over 1 inch apiece. And this was just a cute miniature that I worked out by hand. It was rather aesthetic. Okay. We're into pegmatites here, and this site was discovered by Jeff. We're calling it the Waterside Prospect, and we're calling it that because it's actually in the bank of a river. When the water is low, we've gone in, we've done trenching, we've removed large amounts of rock, and this is probably Maryland's most prolific burl location. There's literally burls all over the place, but more importantly, there's apatites all over the place. And ironically, some of the boulders of smoky quartz have casts in them. Maybe Edgar Weary knew something we didn't until now. This is a beryl crystal about 3 inches long, nice color. However, we have seen beryls that probably were 7 or 8 inches in the wall. This is a cabinet-sized piece where the beryl is about 3 or 4 inches long. By the way, this Waterside prospect has produced more than beryl and apatite. We've also found some very nice freestanding snow white bertrandites that are sitting in pink albite vugs, and we've found some gonites and other interesting minerals here. However, right now it's underwater because of all the rain we've had over the last couple of years, so I guess we should call it temporarily the Titanic prospect. This was an interesting beryl. This is about 4 inches long. It was on the underside of a large cavity in smoky quartz, and it just kind of fell out. I like the optical effects. And you can't really tell it off this picture, but it's a kind of an aqua overgrowth on a common beryl that's underneath and corroded. Okay, there's a series of mica and feldspar mines in Montgomery County called the Kensington Mica Mine. These are pretty much plowed over, and it's part of a park now, but you can walk across what used to be the dumps, and every so often you can pick up large sections of beryl and other things. When breaking a couple of boulders open one day, I found this rather cool, it's about an inch long monazite crystal, and this was just in a typical pegmatite matrix, but it was the first time we've seen significant monazites in Maryland. Okay, this is the lost Clarksville quartz location. Since 1940, Ostrander and Price's Minerals of Maryland noted that there was a smoky quartz location in Clarksville, which is in Howard County. It was lost to memory until in the 1970s, a local collector named George Brewer rediscovered it. However, he didn't tell anybody where it was, and he passed away unexpectedly, and nobody still knew where it was. In the 1980s, late 80s, I went looking and couldn't find it, and by sheer coincidence, I found a relic collector who knew where it was. So he showed me where it was, and I was able to pick up quartzes for a couple of years, no big deal. And one day I go there, and there's a bulldozer there. They were building houses, and they went right through it, and sticking up out of the ground were these two smokies. This one here is about 1.25 pounds, and this one here is slightly smaller, but we'll show you details of it in a minute. This was a really cool, this is it, the 1.25 pound one. It's in good shape, it's got a little damage on the tip, but it's very nice color. And this is the second one. Doubly terminated, it was slightly bent, and it had secondary overgrowths on it. We dug about a 10-foot long trench, and along with a slightly smaller trench, and we recovered about 100 crystals. So it was a very interesting find. Unfortunately, it's lost again because there's a house on top of it. Okay, if we go back to Frederick County, we're back in the marbles, the Wakefield marble. This is a malachite from the Liberty mine. This specimen is large cabinet size, and I obtained it from a New England collection. If you were to turn it over, there's an ancient handwritten label on the back, and the bottom of the specimen, there's actually a cavity that goes up all over the inside. That's just like the botryoidal part on the right. It's a really cool specimen. Malachites from Liberty Mine were not uncommon. They were collectible on the dumps in the 1970s. Similar more to this than this, but there were some very nice ones. This is a detail of the right portion of that same specimen. Okay, I mentioned earlier that the type location for kerolite is the Patapsco mine in Carroll County. One can still find kerolite there if one's diligent, and small crystals have been found, actually by people in the audience here. This is a malachite that I obtained from an old collection many years ago, and it was attributed to the Patapsco mine, and was fairly hesitant about exhibiting it as a Maryland piece until I saw other ones very similar to it, and when they turned over the dumps, actually found some pieces that resembled some of these areas here. So we are sure it's from Maryland, we're sure it's from Patapsco. This is a cabinet-sized piece, this is not a micromount of malachite, and if you turn it over, the back of it is all gauze and matrix. If you go down to the quartz veins in Montgomery County, there were gold mines there after the Civil War. There were about 20 gold mines and placers. If you go into Carroll County, those same quartz veins have gone through some of the iron ore bodies. This is a gold specimen. The field of view across here is about 1 inch. So this is not just a micro. The specimen is a large miniature small cabinet piece. And was basically breaking rock along the quartz vein there, produced this and about 20 other gold specimens. This was about 15 years ago. This is a specimen from the Mineral Hill mine, which is also by a quartz vein in the magnetite. This is a much smaller field of view, but again, all these mines had small amounts of gold and it's still collectible. If we go back to Montgomery County, where there are actually gold mines operating till the early 1900s, the most famous and the most prolific one was the Maryland mine, which is now part of Great Falls National Park. This small cabinet, large miniature piece is typical of the iron-stained corroded quartz out of there. And if you notice, there is gold all through it. There's a very similar specimen with a large sheet of gold sitting on a similar matrix right now in the gold exhibit at the Smithsonian. If one takes this area or something like it and blows it up, this is what you see. So definitely gold, definitely Maryland, very typical from there. Now people are still panning gold today, and there's been some significant nuggets found there. I don't have any pictures of those, unfortunately, but I do have a picture of one in my collection. This was a placer gold that was collected in the 60s from a stream just on the edge of the National Park property. A guy found about 20 or 30 of them. Okay. The most prolific and probably best known location in Maryland is Medford Quarry. It's famous for its calcites. There were lots of them, but many of them were mud included, so they weren't really exciting, although the local collectors do enjoy them. There were two localities, however, at Medford Quarry. One was the upper end of the ramp, where they found these really pretty, and continue to find these really pretty, clear to frosty calcites. This is a small cabinet-sized piece. This crystal is about 1.5 inches in diameter, very complex, and for people who like fluorescence, these actually have a weak terlingua type fluorescence response. This is a larger cluster. This is a cabinet-sized piece, again with about 1.5 inches on the main crystal. Okay, throughout the quarry, as you go down the ramp, you go down to the bottom, there were pockets of all different types found here and there. Most of these were pockets up to a few inches. However, when they went down to the bottom of the ramp, they encountered a huge fault zone. And this fault zone produced huge numbers of calcites. This is what a typical pocket at Medford would look like. That big crystal there is probably about 6 inches. There were dozens and dozens of these pockets. If you went into a pocket and you didn't like it, you could break another pocket next to you and see if you liked that better. They were that common. In 1991, a pocket was collected that was so big that 2 grown men could walk into it and bang away without touching the other one. The largest plate out of there was about 200 pounds with a 22-inch doubly terminated crystal. Unfortunately, it was mud included, but it was fairly spectacular. These are just a couple of views of a couple of my favorite pieces from the fault zone. This is a small cabinet-sized piece. Okay, but Medford is more than just calcite, and this is something that a lot of people, even local people, don't bother to look for anything else. This is a lanthanite. These were collected about 1970 from a single find, a sole seam. These are large microcrystals, but nice purple color. These have been identified by the Smithsonian, and they're just beautiful, beautiful pale purple lanthanides. We also have really modified galena crystals, barite crystals, malachite crystals, wurtzite crystals, and so on down the line. Okay, if Medford is the most prolific location in Maryland, the next location I'm going to discuss, the Portland Cement Quarry at Union Bridge, is easily the most unpredictable location in the state of Maryland. I've been there about 60 times. I would venture to say that almost every time you would find nothing but small calcites and maybe some micros and things. However, it has a reputation for being so unpredictable, it's very inviting. You want to go back again and again. Even though it's the same formation as Medford, which is just about 5 miles away, it does not have the calcites that Medford has until about 1993. Andy Dietz and I.
Oh no!
Yes, that's the problem with this Plan B. It ends right there, unfortunately. So we missed the last 10 minutes or so of the presentation, unfortunately. So I'm going to turn it back over to questions and answers, or questions to Fred and see if he has any answers. If you want to put a question in the chat box, you can go ahead, or if you want to raise your hand, I can call on you and you can ask Fred directly.
Okay, so it turns out that there were a lot of quarries that produced some really cool stuff. I mean, in addition to Hunting Hill, there were the Vulcan quarries up by northeast Maryland that produced a lot of small stuff and epidote and not so good, but there was one particular blast that for years this wall had produced massive pyrite, but this one particular blast produced these just bucket loads of these amazing pyrite crystals. This is 2 inches. And there were actually there were so many pyrites that one day that people were actually shoveling them into the back of their pickup trucks. There were so many. Don't know where they all went, but they got up to about 4 inches that day. And that was the thing about Maryland. Other than Hunting Hill, everything was chance. I mean, Hunting Hill was pretty reliable. You were going to come out with something. Vulcan and some of the other quarries, you could go 7 or 8 times and find hardly anything, and then the next time find something terrific. So we just kept trying and trying. And there were some interesting finds along the way. I know does that work?
Yes, it did.
Okay. So also there were several quarries out in western Maryland. There was one in Flintstone. There was one near Hagerstown at Beaver Creek, places that people just never bothered to look in. And Beaver Creek produced some wonderful celestite crystals and some wonderful strontianite. The Baltimore Club back in the 70s went in there after they hit a pocket of strontianite, and the pieces were just spectacular. They're white puff balls about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch on a bed of druzy calcite crystals. And then out in western Maryland, the Flintstone area, was found some very nice fluorite crystals. Nice purplish fluorites, and again, calcite. There's calcite all over the place out there. So Maryland had good stuff. It probably still has good stuff, but you guys probably can't get at it. Another spot that was interesting was the Washington, D.C. reservoir, right on off of 29. When they lowered the reservoir, for maintenance or whatever, there were actually pegmatite dikes that were exposed. And you found beryl crystals like this one here, up to about 3 or 4 inches long. And they were in the mica schist. It wasn't a specific locality. It's just we used to go traipsing through the woods looking for new things, and we found it. And that was true of a number of places. Now, some of you may have heard of Frostburg, Maryland. They used to be iron mines out there. They used to actually mine the sedimentary iron there. And the one particular mine was known for producing beautiful super sparkly barite crystals on siderite crystals. And that same mine produced some incredible millerite crystals. They were almost as good as the stuff from Halls Gap, Kentucky, which is kind of the premier U.S. location. Sprays up to about an inch of bright golden fans of brassy millerite crystals. But one-time find, maybe 20 pieces found. This was the whole, from 1983 to 2010, that was collecting in Maryland. So that's about all I can say off the top of my head. So you may have questions.
This is Scott French. You gave me a specimen or provided giveaways at one point of aragonite. And I believe the location was listed as Arbutus. Does that ring a bell?
Arbutus Canyon, yes.
Yeah, I was just curious. I didn't think that was a quarry location.
It's not.
Yeah.
So the Arbutus location was an iron mine. And I don't know if it was any fossil people in the group, but as I understand it, that mine, or at least the mines around it, in the 1800s produced a lot of dinosaur bones. Now, I actually have several dinosaur bones from there, but it also produced iridescent siderite. And with the iridescent siderite were little white barite crystals. I assume that's what you're referring to.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Got everybody excited. I have a question. I have a question, Fred. If you are a new mineral collector in Maryland, is everything gone? Is everything covered up? I mean, if you were new to minerals, if you're a kid coming into it, where would you send them out right now to find something cool and get hooked like you did when you were 11?
So I haven't been there in 10 years, so it's a little bit of an iffy question. But if it was 10 years ago and I had a new collector or somebody wanted to get enthused, I'd take them up to Mineral Hill. Stuff's kind of pretty. It's easy to find. There's not a lot of walking. So I do Mineral Hill. Boy, beyond that, it's rough. It really is. That's where I'd start. I mean, there's not a lot that I can tell you that would be good for a newbie collector.
All right, the questions are coming in. I'm going to let Dustin go ahead. He has his hand up. Go ahead, Dustin.
Hey, I have a piece that was labeled from the Baltimore Tunnel excavations. It's iridescent siderite. Do you know anything about that site?
Well, there were a lot of specimens that came out when the tunnels were being dug, so you do run across them in some of the old collections. And that's to be my guess is it's a tunnel piece from whatever the tunnels were put through, what, 40s or 50s?
Yeah, I was just curious because I never read anything about it in any literature or anything. So I didn't know if it was like, or if even to, I assumed it was somewhat similar to the Baltimore Canyon.
Right, right.
So
yeah.
just
Also,
curious
some
about
pegmatite stuff came out of the tunnels.
that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
I have
Scott
other questions as well, but I think other people should ask them first.
Okay, we'll come back to you, Dustin, for other ones. Scott asked, what can you tell me about the Fanny Frost mine in Howard County?
Fanny Frost. That may actually still be accessible because that was, as I recall, in a park. It should be in one of the guidebooks. The thing we found at the Fanny Frost that was most interesting were some sphene or titanite crystals. There was mica there as well and a little bit of beryl. But yeah, I've been there in the past.
Fred, you have your hand up. Go ahead, Fred.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Fred. It's nice to see you again. I don't know if you remember
Thank
me,
you.
but we met a while ago. And I heard you talking about the beryl occurrence.
Right.
And I wasn't sure where you said that was. I was trying to tune in at that time to it. And I remember you saying you found some nice barrels in there.
So you're probably referring to the what we called the waterside prospect, which was when the river and the reservoirs were low, when they weren't flowing water through them. There's actually pegmatites in the rock that outcrops on the bottom of the river and reservoir. So once the water rises again, of course, they disappear. But that's probably what I was referring to.
I think so, but which reservoir? Are you talking about Patuxent River?
What's the name of the one right off of Route 29 on the left side as you're going south? It's the Washington, D.C. reservoir. I forget the name of it
Yeah,
offhand.
Patuxent Reservoir, I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. And that was it was a prospect there. They were taking feldspar, I think, right? And it was
Correct.
called Maryland Materials or Maryland, something like that. I'm trying to remember the name of it.
Right.
But yeah, there was feldspar, and then with that, some beryl. I went in there a while ago and found a little bit of beryl, not very good ones, but there was
Yeah.
some. You have to dig a whole lot.
Yeah. Even back 10, 20 years ago, it was so weathered, you didn't really find very much.
Exactly. Um, then there was another one that you mentioned. Now I forgot. I'll think of
We'll come
it.
back to you. We'll come back to
Okay.
you, Fred.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We have Richard asks, are there mineral arrowheads? He's heard there are mineral arrowheads along the Susquehanna. Have you heard about that?
Absolutely. There's lots of Native American relics along the Susquehanna River. There's also, as I recall, some petroglyphs there in the Susquehanna River, which is very interesting if you ever get the chance to go out. You're in the middle of the river, and there used to be a group that used to take people out there. But yeah, there's stuff along the river.
In fact, we are that group that takes people out to the
Good.
petroglyphs every summer. So if you want to come out, we have Scott Nevin who comes out with us and interprets the petroglyphs. So come on out. We have
Excellent.
Ivy asks you, are there any mines that are still accessible to the public?
Well, again, not having been there for 10 years, I assume Mineral Hill still is. I assume that Orchard Mine, where the Carolite was originally found, should still be there. But a lot of the others, especially the copper mines, people have built on or next to them, and they aren't too friendly to visitors. So very limited, unfortunately.
Well, let me just, since you haven't been in Maryland for 10 years, and the folks that are on here, maybe y'all can answer Ivy's question, put it in the chat box in places that they can go and check out if you want to share those locations. I know everybody gets kind of weird about sharing locations. Linda asks, what types of minerals can be found in Harford County near Darlington?
Oh, well, the closest thing is up on the Pennsylvania-Maryland border. There used to be a series of serpentine deposits and chromite. That would be the closest locality to what you're talking about. Give me a sec, I'll get you the exact name.
He's looking at it. He's finding the specimen.
Yeah, I can't find offhand, but does somebody in the audience know I'm talking about the serpentine Williamsite deposits?
The state line prospects?
State line, thank you, yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I was only asking because I have access to a private area and the owners are only letting me go there, and I don't know quite. I'm thinking maybe serpentine because it is close northeast. You know, they own this property and I don't know the name of the claim. So that's why I was asking. I was thinking serpentine, and what did you say? Williamite?
Williamsite is the name for the gem serpentine. The other thing you could find in that area, and it's in the same type of rock, are magnetite crystals. They're octahedral black magnetite crystals, and they're usually often found with the serpentine.
Those sound cool.
Too.
Yeah.
I was going to say, isn't the Rutiel prospect also near there?
You're right. The Dinning Rutiel prospect is up there also. I don't know the status of it, though.
So Scott asks, I have a Vivianite specimen obtained from Alan Antisdell. Is there a significant Vivianite in Maryland?
No, it'd be pretty rare. It'd all come from the sedimentary deposits along the bay where like the selenite gypsums are found.
Oxon Hill was the one location near in DC where some Vivianite was found.
That's
a long
true.
time ago. Some people say there's still some in there. It's kind of a risky neighborhood to go in and look.
Yes, it is.
But there might be some in the bank there if you dig around a lot. If it's okay, I might mention Mineral Hill, as we have been hearing, is the one place where folks can walk in up the fire trail and get to the top where the rubble fields are and dig and look for stuff. There have been a lot of people going up there recently. Stuff is still coming out of those rubble piles. Plenty of malachite, perhaps in different qualities, but if you're diligent, you'll get some good ones. Chrysocolla, we found recently some beautiful ones. Some of the malachite we found had nice little botryoidal malachite. Pseudo-malachite we've been finding as well, which was pretty nice actually. Some real shiny, gemmy-looking pseudo-malachite. Plenty of chalcopyrite still to be found. Those are always pretty. People like, if you're really lucky, you'll find a really rich piece that's loaded with it. Zoisite we can find. If you're looking in the right place, there is some of that up there. And of course, magnetite is everywhere.
Right.
And sometimes, if you're lucky, you'll get carolite with that, and it might be mixed in with some of the chalcopyrite too. I've seen it come out of there like that.
Oh, that's excellent. That's good to hear.
Yeah, it's rare, but you can find it if you look enough. Other places in Maryland, it's more like sneaking in and press your luck. You know what I mean? I have been to quite a few places, but they're not the kind of places where you're going to find stuff easily. And most of the time, as you mentioned, they're either on private or border private property, so they're not really recommended to go. But for a nice excursion, Mineral Hill is still a good place for people to go to.
Excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. I went in the Patapsco mine a few times. It's not a mine to speak of. They've bulldozed it all over, as you know, when they put in 140. So there's nothing really as a thing to find. We did find a pit, which may have been one of the shafts. And a little bit of material came out of there. Again, the same sort of stuff you might find at Mineral Hill. One friend of mine stumbled upon some gorgeous samples of malachite and also samples of chrysocolla that just blew me away when I saw them. They were large and very rich, and since then, it's nothing like that has turned up. It was a surface find, and it was like he fell upon the needle in the haystack, pretty much. That's about
After a rain, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So, question to everybody there. What guidebooks do you have still available to you?
Why don't y'all put that in the chat box, and I'm going to come back to Dustin. Dustin, you said you had another question for Fred.
My question was actually about the fluorite crystals from the Flintstone quarry. Were those like the similar ones to that's showing up in PA in like the limestone quarries, or were they like actual distinct cubes?
No, they were cubes. There was massive purple, and then there were vugs with small cubes in it. Scott Braley, I don't know if you guys know him. He also was an ex-DC area who moved out here, and he found some pretty sizable stuff out there that was very, very nice. So, yeah, try everything. Road cuts, by the way, are a good place to find things. If there's a new road construction going on and they're doing blasting or whatever, you can find some really cool stuff in road cuts.
I wonder if there are going to be any finds near near with the Key Bridge, new construction going on for that?
Maybe. If they dig into rock and they have to dump it somewhere, find out where they're dumping it.
I might add that looking for large construction sites is always a plus.
Mm-hmm.
There was one site that we went into off of Johnny Cake Road, just going, I guess, southwest of the Security Mall area. And they put in a huge subdivision in there. But when they had bulldozed all the area out and they started putting in the sewer drains and infrastructure, I went in there and looked around, and there was lots of minerals to be found in there, surprisingly. There was pyroxene minerals, which kind of indicate old rock, old material, pyroxene and metapyroxenes. There were some quartz with small vugs of druzy quartz in the vugs. There was opal. That was the surprise there. We found some opal.
That is a surprise.
Yeah, and actually some pretty nice pieces, rich, but again, not anything gem, but more like a tan color opal, and other ones that were clear. They did not fluoresce, but it was opal. And here's the surprise of all. There was one spot where they dug up all this white rock. I think it's feldspar, and we were looking at it, and there was amphibole network of fibers of amphibole and like long, thin crystals of amphiboles in it. But upon closer inspection, we found titanite crystals in it.
Good for you.
Yeah, that's just a surprise. But yeah, there was a few that had some light brown colored titanite in it. And of course, it's gone. Right now, there's houses up over top of that. And the big one, I guess maybe, Fred, you heard of this, was at Owings Mills when they put in this other big subdivision called, what's it called now? Off of between Glen Lyon and
it was Ballard Green.
Yes, thank you, Dustin. Ballard Green is what the name of this development is. But it was one of the largest quartz occurrences ever found in Maryland. And
Heard
people
about that.
pulling up lots of it, plenty of points and small plates and stuff, even lavender colored, like sort of amethyst ones, smokies, pretty smokies too. One of them's at the Natural History Society in the showcase there. It's all black. It's really nice. So some pretty cool stuff came out of there for quartz. And that was open. People were just coming in there and leaving with all kinds of material from there.
That's excellent.
Yeah, and of course, it's all gone now. It's all built over. So any of these construction sites, if folks see a big place where it's been bulldozed, don't hesitate if you can go in there and walk through and see what kind of rocks they're pulling up, because again, you never know what might turn up.
That's
And
right.
you got to break rocks too. Take your hammers with you.
Oh, yes. Well, it sounds like there's still a few things here and there. You just got to be on top of it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's excellent. Good.
Well, do we have any other questions for Fred while we have him here, or any other surprises that you might have found in Maryland minerals? And I hope that you can put it in the chat box there, or raise your hand and you can tell us about it. One thing I think that you will agree, maybe, Fred, you need to come back and visit us. When are you coming back to Maryland?
We don't come back very often, but we do it occasionally. Can certainly keep that in mind, because like I say, I'm really proud of you guys yeah, that was Harold Levy's biggest dream. Did you know Harold?
I did not, but I've seen pictures.
Okay. So his dream, and he was an incredible collector. His dream was that the Natural History Society, which I guess he's helped start, would be revived and be a force again in Maryland natural history. And it looks like you guys have done it. Kudos to you guys. Harold would be happy.
Harold would be happy, and I think that you'd be surprised when you come in and see all that we've done and all that the direction that we're going. So it's a very exciting time for the organization and for natural history in the state of Maryland.
If we can get there, we'll be happy to do it, because I'd like to see what you got. And by the way, do you guys still have that big calcite crystal that I was talking about?
Yes, we do.
Okay,
this
good.
is Joe McSherry.
Oh, hi, Joe. How you doing?
Great. Yeah, we have that. And also, I just wanted to mention Harold Levy's very first mineral, the tourmaline that he found at Pimlico, that got him into all this, is on display in our collections.
Fantastic. I remember it well.
Yep, and we had him come in one day. He hadn't been to the Natural Society for so long. He came in and saw that, and he just loved the fact that we had it sitting there out and on display. So it started it all for him.
It did. Yep. That's great.
And that's what we have to keep in mind about kids as well, is that we don't necessarily have to go to a mine. He was at Pimlico looking for snakes and picked up a rock and broke it and saw this tourmaline, and suddenly he just changed directions. So you never know what's going to happen out there.
Exactly. Okay, well, this has been a pleasure talking with you guys and chatting with all the members. I hope you enjoyed it.
We certainly did, and I do apologize to everyone about the technical difficulties. It was almost deja vu all over again, because there were technical difficulties in 2010 for the original